What's up, y'all? My name is JR, and for those of you who don't already know, I'm a huge movie and TV nerd. If you're new here, I appreciate you taking the time to check out my channel. I hope you'll consider sticking around and joining the film community I'm trying to build here on YouTube. So in today's video, I'm going to be giving my reaction and review for Lionsgate's latest horror film, The Strangers, Chapter 1. And just so you guys know, this video will contain spoilers, so if for some reason you haven't gotten around to seeing this movie yet, and you don't want to know anything that happens in it, you might want to exit this video now. And with that being said, no more wasting time. Let's get into it. The Strangers, Chapter 1 is an American horror film that is the third film in the Strangers film series and the first installment of an intended relaunch in the form of a standalone trilogy. It is directed by Rennie Harlin with a screenplay by Alan R. Cohen and Alan Friedland from a story by Brian Bertino, the director of the first film. Madeline Paste and Froy Gutierrez star as a couple who come in contact with the three psychopathic masked strangers while on a road trip. Gabriel Basso and Emma Horvath also star. Now, plans for a consecutively shot trilogy of Strangers films was announced in August of 2022 by the original film's producer, Roy Lee. Harlan was announced as the director of all three the following month, with most of the cast joining soon after. Production on the films took place in Bratislava between September and November that year, often alternating daily between which of the three chapters was being shot. The Strangers, Chapter 1, had its world premiere at Regal LA Live on May 8th of this year and was theatrically released by Lionsgate Film on May 17th. To this point, the film has grossed $37 million worldwide, but it has received negative reviews from critics who deem it inferior to the previous films. Chapter 2 is expected to be released later this year, and Chapter 3 does not have a specific release date as of yet. Now, at the time of the making of this video, the movie has a meager 22% on Rotten Tomatoes, based on 93 critics. So that's a lot of critics for the Rotten Tomatoes score to be that low. It has a better, but still bad audience score of just 44%. And that's based on over 500 ratings. Again, that's a lot of ratings for the score to be so low. It has a Metascore of 43 on Metacritic, and that's based on 22 critic reviews, with a user score of just 4.6, and that's based on 36 user ratings. And finally, it has just a 4.7 out of 10 on IMDb, with almost 9,000 ratings. So, look, I realize that I'm a bit late to this particular party, but I just want to take a moment to state that is primarily because all I've heard about this movie was that it was bad. Really bad. I even saw on all the aggregators, as I just mentioned, that it had really low ratings. But I try not to take too much stock in the aggregators, and I know some of you might be like, oh yeah, right. But I only really use the scores in my videos to help frame the general sentiment around a particular film before I give my opinion on said film. So I just basically use the scores to kind of frame the narrative before I kind of go in and say what I'm going to say about a movie. So that's why I use the aggregator scores in that way. But I finally had some time to sit down and watch this movie, and I have to say, this is a really bad horror film, guys. This film seemed to depend almost entirely on genre and the fact that it's a trilogy to kind of sell itself. But I think the latter is rather short-sighted. The filmmakers seem to think that by splitting this story into three parts, that would buy them the time to bring the story home in a satisfactory fashion. But sadly, this chapter of said trilogy was so bad, I'm not sure many moviegoers are going to give the filmmakers a chance to get to the point. We know we live in a microwave society nowadays, one where people are short on patience. And given the extremely poor start this story got off to, and predictable start, by the way, I wonder if people will be willing to buy 2 more movie tickets just to see how it ends. which is why, as I watched the first 20 minutes or so of this movie, I thought it would be important that this film followed in the footsteps of slasher films that came before it. Now, what I mean by that is, historically, these kinds of movies tend to follow the exact same playbook, especially the ones that have worked. And the reason being is because it works. That means, from a narrative standpoint, there's not a lot that sets these movies apart from all the other films like them, except for the who and the why. Who is the killer, or in this case, the killers, and why are they killing people? That's going to usually be what's going to make or break a horror film. Those are the most important pieces to consider when writing stories like this. I mean, think about all the slashers that have gone on to become iconic. In Halloween, we knew who Michael Myers was. We knew what his backstory was and why he was killing people. In Friday the 13th, again, we knew who Jason Voorhees was and primarily why he was killing people. And even in the Scream franchise, which kind of updated the slasher film and kind of took the subgenre, forward to, present day, those films had multiple killers, like we do here in this film. But even still, we eventually found out, before the movie was done, who the killers were and why they were killing people. And here in this film, you don't get any of that. Now, add to that fact that the killers in this film don't express any kind of personality or emotion, and you essentially have a movie that ends the same way it started, with you knowing absolutely nothing. And the problem with that is that it makes it impossible for us to care past the potentially triggering effect of simply seeing someone murdered on screen. Now, the whole blank slate killer can be impactful, and sometimes it can even add to the creep factor, if you will. But I always try to explain to people that's a gimmick, right? And it should not be used as a substitute for a good story. Like, if you have a great story and it just so happens that the killer doesn't talk and that we don't see his face, that's one thing. But to literally use the killer and the fact that he doesn't talk and the fact that we don't see his face as the story, that's where I think you mess up. And, never mind the fact that you typically can only go to that well, like I said again, if it makes your story somehow stand out in a rather crowded genre. And, I don't think it can in this day and age because we've had so many masked slashers before that didn't say anything. And even if it did, I say again, there has to be a history of some kind that makes us give a shit about a masked, mute, knife or axe-wielding psycho. And here, there just was none. Now, outside of this extremely flawed story, the writing was rather pedestrian. Though I'm not going to kill the filmmakers for that, no pun intended, because these types of films don't typically depend too much on an expertly crafted prose, right? It's usually just a bunch of just, bland kind of conversational dialogue. There ain't no Oscar-winning monologues in these films, you feel me? The acting was just okay. Though I have to give it up for Madeline Page and her very, very believable cry face. It almost looked like she was about to bubble up some snot, boy. She had it going for a second. I got to give her that part. Now, casting seemed like it would have been pretty easy in a film like this because really there's only 5 characters of any consequence here, and 3 of them don't even say nothing. Well, 2, one of the masked killers did actually say a sentence towards the end, but that shit don't count. And I was rather surprised this film didn't find Sydney Sweeney starring in it because, hell, everything else has, right? And you would think that for a movie that's only 91 minutes long, that the movie would be an easy watch, but it's not. Now, overall, I give this movie a 40% or a 4.0 if you're thinking IMDb score. And I know that's the lowest score I've given a movie since I started my channel. Now, when I do these reviews, I usually try to keep in mind just how hard it is to make a movie these days, let alone a good one. Shit, I don't even think Hollywood will let you make a good one these days. Um, and I also try to remember that I myself will eventually have to endure criticism of my own work one day soon, if I'm lucky. But when it all comes down to it, I have to call a spade a spade. And guys, this movie just wasn't it. I would even go so far as to tell you, don't even waste your time with this one. Because this film went to a very outdated bag of tricks in an effort to trick us all into believing that this film was some form of horror meta, including standing behind the original film, which I happen to think worked a lot better than this one did. And, while I think this film might have worked in the 80s, in 2024, it just doesn't make the cut. But what do you guys think? Have you seen The Strangers Chapter 1 yet? If you have, are you one of the handful of people that liked it? How do you think it stacks up against the other films of the genre, or even the other films in this series so far? Let me know in the comments. And for those of you that might be new to the channel, be sure to like and share this video. If you really like the content, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. That way you'll be notified whenever I drop a new video. Also, be sure to go and check out themadScreenwriter.com for more television and film reviews and info on my upcoming film projects. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I got screenplays to write. And I'll catch y'all in the next video.